Good evening, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin. Welcome once again to McDuff Lives 3. And tonight, it's my pleasure to welcome David Cranmer Underdown back for a two-way discussion tonight. Looking forward to another three-way with David and Mark one time soon. But tonight, I'm looking forward to simply catching up with David and what he's been interested in lately. I look at David's Twitter every day, and David is never disappoints. Sometimes I think, David, what I can do with these shows is just put Twitter up there and just go from one to another and have you expound upon them. But anyway, how are you, and what's on your mind?
Well, I'm doing well and happy to be back. As we were just saying, I've been following along with your latest reading, the True Flag, the Stephen Kinsner book, and I've been really enjoying it. I think it has a lot of points that I'm always trying to fill in characters and blanks, and he really goes through a period that is important, like you've commented on with a lot of people focus on the creation of the Federal Reserve Act and 1913 being an area to really look, but there's definitely a lot to investigate in the 19th century as well.
Let's see. Robert and has been saying there's a little echo. It may be just from you having your speaker on. I don't know, but if Deborah says it's 5 by 5, sounds fine to being here. Okay, I'm not going to be trouble with it unless someone else has a problem. Sound is always an issue, sometimes echoes come from who knows where, but
Yeah.
if it's good, it's good. So I apologize for interrupting you, David. Thank you for the reference to my True Flag series. I've done 5 of them so far. And I will keep going for a little while. I think I'll do one on Friday at 11 a.m. on the 11 a.m. show with Neighborhood News. And by the way, I do support very much their effort. I think they're doing a great job up there, and I know you support it as well. So Neighborhood News Studio, shout out to you guys. Thanks for everything. And Robert says he had 2 windows open. So it wasn't me. Yay! It wasn't you. It wasn't me. It was Robert. All right. Thanks, Robert, for owning up to it. So there you go. Lots of stuff going on, good stuff. A diverse crowd of people at Neighborhood News Studio, and so many different angles to explore. Isn't it one thing I would say, David, is right now I am excited about history. I am excited about politics. I am excited about medicine. I'm excited about biology, and I'm excited about chemistry. I am excited about learning stuff. And I haven't been excited about learning stuff in decades. Really, it's always been so depressing that things just happen, They are going to do this, and they're doing this. Oh, now they're doing that. Well, what does that have to do with me? I can watch them do it. But now, because of the intense interest that we have in trying to right this ship, that seems to be going aground, we're all back into books and back into studies, and I'm loving it. I think you probably are too.
Definitely. Following your books, and even the talks that George had this week talking about the history of Italy and how knowing your Pope Pius is, and how that can unlock a lot of the history. Because again, it is exciting to look, from different eras, because we're growing up in America, we focus so much on the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and then the World Wars and Vietnam. But a lot of these events are international and have to understand them, you do need to know your European history and your Asian history, and that's it's a building process, and it's been very for me, you referenced my Twitter. I mean, that's just where I basically dump my notes and what I learn, and try to link things together as far as going back in time and then trying to draw it to now and to be helpful and to try to understand what's going on, because they've just made it so simple where it's the same old, the strong man is attacking the weak, and that's all you need to know, and there's so much more behind it all.
I'm glad to hear that George is exploring. Well, he's over there, but he's exploring the Italian history. I went through a period of that myself about 2 years ago, both with Hitler's Pope by John Cornwell, an incredible book called Hitler's Pope. It's all about Pacelli, Pius XII,
Hmm.
and during the war, and he was not only he knew all about the horrific stuff that was going on in Croatia with Bishop Hudal and all, and this then you have Montini, who becomes Paul VI. And he's the one that writes Humanae Vitae, the encyclical in which it says that it's okay if sterility happens as a quote unintended result of curing a disease.
Right.
And that phrase, I can't emphasize how important that phrase is, because when you see how easy it is to go over that slippery slope to say, oh yeah, well, this is incidental. Well, this is incidental. And then suddenly, you've got Peter Strzok in Africa. You've got, people doing all of these, vaccinations,
Right.
but tie that into to what we know about, the Kissinger and SSM 200 and the whole depopulation agenda, which is tied into the eugenicists, and tying that brings us right back into the turn of the century where we started talking. But the Pope, Americans, we don't have a sense even now of how important it is, to the Catholic portion of Europe to know what the Pope thinks. What does he say about this? What does he say about that? And he was fine with fascism. He was fine with Nazism. And we get some, you can see where when Cornwell's book came out, the Vatican attacked him, and he had to pull back a couple of his a couple of sentences out of the book, I think. And then the other one was God's Bankers, which really goes through the financial side of it. And then last year I read Paul Williams's Operation Gladio, and when you get that into you, then you understand that the popes have been subverted to the use of Kissinger on the one hand and the mafia on the other hand. And the IOR, the Vatican Bank, it was just too tempting to use for all of the money laundering that's been going on. And it's a horrible, horrible story to realize that these people around those popes, they are the black nobility. They are the ones that say we are the legitimate empire that rules the world, and they had control of the papacy. I think right now they don't have control of the papacy. I think that now has been taken over by the intelligence agencies, CIA, etc. But I'm delighted to see that people are going to pay attention to that. Of course, it all fits in with the Synarchy and Coudenhove Kalergi and their attempts at creating a united Europe in the 30s that still lingers into now through the UN and all of the stay behind armies and the creepy stuff that we're still uncovering new versions of those secret armies that were left behind or created or just mercenaries that are in Madrid and in the leftovers, the rat lines, the Odessa people. They're real. We talked about Scorzeni last time we talked, I think, and Scorzeni, von Bolschwing, all of these people are real.
Right.
And it should scare people, you know. It should wake people up to say, you know, Nazism didn't die just because, you know, Hitler supposedly, you know, committed suicide in a bunker, which I don't believe that either. But
Right.
but people have been sold a bill of goods about it for just too long. Those people, Nazism did not die. Just
Well,
went under, you know, went into the back room and doing push-ups.
yeah, you know, there, I always try to organize the different factions and different parts of this the synarchy that you talk about, and the the military operations, you know, is very important, but also the intelligence agencies have the the public relations and propaganda angle, and studying that is also another really key area, you know, given the changes that we have now with Department of Homeland Security sort of stepping forward with a new role of vetting information and looking at the legs of that and the roots of that, where it comes from. And you know, it to me I feel like it really is the old SOE, the OSS that turned into the, you know, CIA, that, you know, had their branches in the Rockefeller Center with, you know, NBC being right there and David Sarnoff being the, you know, big leader of that movement in America, and then having the Voice of America groups in Europe, but also in South America as well, and how those factions play into the you know, the overthrows that the Dulles brothers were really coordinating with the same SOE group from England. I saw somebody this week posted how, like, Operation Ajax, which was the overthrow of the Mossadegh in 1954 in Iran, how they say that everybody always wants to say that it's the CIA that did that, but they feel like it really was the OSS, or I mean the SIS, the British intelligence, that did it. But to me, I again, just like doing teams, it really to me is the oil, you know, the Seven Sisters being the sort of the Rockefeller American oil, and then having the British Petroleum and the Royal Dutch Shell, and Total being the French interests. Those are the groups that are really behind that. And even with the book that you're currently reading, talking a lot about Teddy Roosevelt, his grandson was Kim Roosevelt, that led a lot of the Operation Ajax, and then he also gets involved with Adnan Khashoggi and the sort of the Iran Contra. So that's why when I say that it's really interesting to draw a line from, you know, the turn of the century and Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt going from the U.S. Navy to the presidency, and how his grandchildren, you know, kind of take that same sort of role, you know, going into the middle of the 20th century. It's you know, it's worth studying it.
Yeah, it's essential. This is the key to why kids lose interest in history, because we're only told the true flag version of America. We're not told the imperialist side. And when you realize that, you know, Henry Cabot Lodge was, you know, card carrying imperialist. You know, so was Roosevelt, so was Hearst, so were so many of these people, and a number of the people that I quote from the book, that they are card carrying, you know, put it on my name tag, imperialists. They're not hiding it, they're not ashamed of it. This is the best thing for the world, is that America becomes an empire. And then, you know, then they have that same crazy idea that they're going to, you know, lift the savages out of the morass and make their lives better, which of course is bullshit. They're just going there to convert a new territory into assets, and the hell with the native people. That's the way colonialism is, always has been, And Americans knew it. But we're going to do it anyway. We're going to go out there and we're going to we're going to crush the hopes and dreams of native peoples in the Philippines, in Cuba, in Hawaii, in Puerto Rico, in Guam. We are going to do it right now in 1898 because we are the greatest hope of mankind. And that was the imperialist side of it. And it's incredible when you see, as Kinzer, rightly points out, the debates are of a very high quality. The people, they were learned people on both sides, and they spoke very well. So the debates that we're having now about, are we the world's policemen? Are we supposed to be taking care of, the problems of Europe, or why are we extending ourselves into these horrible, messy situations? That that is the question of, do we want to be an empire? And now that we have to face the fact that, hey, this is not something that happened after World War II. This country has had imperial impulses, imperial drives and ambitions, and for most of the 20th century. And we have to face that and say, you know what? The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the works of Lincoln and all of our most respected leaders of the past are opposed to this, absolutely opposed to it, and we should get out of that business if we want to fulfill the promise and dreams of the founding fathers, and really create what Jefferson called an empire of liberty. An empire of liberty. Well, let's make an empire of liberty here at home where people are free, and give them the four freedoms that Franklin Roosevelt promised them. Freedom from war, freedom from want, from hunger, from fear. Uh, you know, the idea that we can't take care of our own people first before we go out and conquer the world. The issue then, as well as the issue now. I love though to also speculate as to, I've talked about the Yankee Cowboy War from Oglesby's point of view, and I still see, the body of people that I see with Douglas MacArthur, you know, and as opposed to the body of people that I see with Allen Dulles and the Wall Street people. Those are two different imperial Americas. And to me, the MacArthur one is the one that's tied to the Philippines, and the one that's, we're going to go and expand our empire to the west. We're going to go to Hawaii. We're going to go to the Philippines. We're going to go to China. As it said in the book, we're going to convert the Chinese from eating vegetables to eating meat and potatoes. We're going to teach them, to use nails instead of, their wonderful old traditional building techniques, and we're going to get them involved in our economy. Basically, we're going to have a huge market. That's that empire. That's Lodge. That's Henry Cabot Lodge's empire. But now you have the other empire, which is we're going to get money. We're going to get rich off of the old money of Europe. We're going to take the Rothschild money and the Bank of England, and we're going to finance things with all of this, and that ties us into the European and especially the British financial system, for all of the rest of the 20th century and beyond. That's where we're stuck right now. We've got part of America that is, I would say, the January 6th crowd that wants to, be a republic, but nevertheless is still, wants to hang on to Hawaii and not that they're not imperial in that upper Republican party sense of things. Not that they're not imperial, but they are not the type of empire that Europe would impose on us if we gave in, if we let America become Great Britain again, if we went into Andrew Carnegie's desire to take America, split it into a number of provinces and reintegrate it into the British Empire. That's what those people would like to do. That Allen Dulles would do that. The New England old money would do that. They're ready. They want to be part of that empire. But the other empire, the westward empire, that's the one that I think is inclined to preserve what I'm more interested in, and that is individual rights.
Hmm.
Because with the January 6th crowd, it's all about the Bill of Rights. It's about, freedom of speech and the citizen's right to be heard, to ask for a redress of grievances, and to observe what the Congress is doing. And that's what I think the real point was to let's watch and see if they have a fair debate and fair vote on whether or not, the election was fairly won by Biden. That kind of, I want to be a citizen, I want to participate, and I want my Bill of Rights. I want it. I will not give up my inalienable rights. That is still associated with an America that was imperial, but it was the 1898 empire, and it's really not an empire anymore because America's global anyway. But what it really does, it's a reservoir of the people that believe in the old flag, the flag of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And this is the contrast with the Wall Street City of London gang, is they don't give a damn about the Bill of Rights. They never did. They don't care about us. They're a commercial empire that feels that the best thing for the world is business. Let's just keep on doing business, and what happens to individual people is just it's fate. uh Sorry for the rant, but you get me started pretty
Yeah.
pretty pretty
Well,
well there, David.
it's yeah. I mean, I again, like when I think about this stuff, I think a lot about the history of the trade companies and how Britain really built their empire on the naval power and the East India Company, and the contrast between building with the inland with the road systems and the railroads, and how that the technology then changed to the age of flight, and how trade routes then changed, with being able to fly goods around as opposed to using um, you know cargo and shipping. And that, I feel like a lot of times that's where the conflicts come from. I even think of it as simply as the Navy versus the Army, and sort of their the power of controlling the land versus controlling the sea historically, and how the different factions play off of those historical links. When we talk about like a John Cabot Lodge and his family, they were old China traders, so they were, their history is going to be very deeply tied to the East India Company, and using shipping logistic networks, and building off that. And if a transcontinental railroad comes along and they're not the builders of that, then they will maybe sandbag or bankrupt the people that are doing. There were a lot of the financial panics that we had in the late 19th century were involved with big infrastructure projects like you're talking about, as far as building up the United States. Where my family's from, in Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, there used to be a lot of canals. Everybody knows the Erie Canal being very famous to the New York markets, but there were canal systems in Indiana and Ohio that would get you between like the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence to the Ohio River and then the Mississippi. So these are all areas where I try to build out the old factions for when you get to like a Cowboys versus uh what's he's the Yankees, the Cowboys. And looking at where they go to school. I mean, even with the lodges being sort of the Boston Brahmin, and their ties with and partnerships with the Russell Company, which was the Yale family was the Russells were there. And then having the development out into the West Coast, and talking about Hawaii and getting to the eastern markets. One of the things I was looking at today was the sugar industry, and I didn't realize that there was I didn't realize that there was basically 5 companies that controlled Hawaii. And the reason I got into that was because the Spreckles, I think, is the German that was in San Francisco. They the guy that was the and I've referenced this a couple times, but at the Wayne State in Detroit, which was the university in downtown Detroit that had um, they had something called the Kresge Hooker Library, and there was a man named Harvey Merker that was the chief chemist for Park Davis Pharmaceutical Company, which was the largest pharmaceutical company in the world, and he was the advisor to this Neil Gordon, who is the man that organized the Gibson Island research conferences by you near Baltimore. And this library had this Joseph Cox Hooker's library of medical. Um, it was the way I understand it is that he had a lot of medical techniques and recipes for medicines, things like that. And his background was with the Philadelphia Sugar Company, and he worked for Spreckles, which was the San Francisco and Southern California that then ends up in Hawaii being one of the major founder of the Sugar Trust, which we talked about Roosevelt doing the trust busting. But there's and then we've talked a lot about United Fruit Company also having the connections with Henry Cabot Lodge's family. They were supposedly one of the largest shareholders of United Fruit, and how United Fruit is a key player with the Dulles brothers, with their Sullivan and Cromwell sort of being the architects of their activities through the legal and through the State Department and then through intelligence. But I try to connect that because again the United Fruit Company is so interesting to me because it gets taken over by Eli Black, who's the father of Leon Black, who was Leon Black was the sidekick of Michael Milken from the Savings and Loan Crisis.
Yeah,
And
go back before that. Go back to Zimuri and
okay, so Zamuri,
come back. Go forward
so
from there.
it starts off as the Boston Fruit Company, and then they're partnered. The United Fruit Company then moves to New Orleans, sort of becomes their base of operations, and then this Samuel Zamuri becomes the head of the United Fruit Company, and they're of course down in like Guatemala and in Central and South America, sort of setting up, you know, fruit plantations, but also doing training of private militaries and whatnot in in Central and South America. But then it goes to this Eli Black, and Eli Black changes the name from United Fruit. There's a lot, there's a lot of bad press as far as their the banana wars became like a known thing where that this company is going in and sort of enslaving people, and they'll call it like a company store model, but they're basically going in and taking the impoverished locals, what we're talking about as far as going in and taking over the territory. And so it becomes an entity of Eli Black, and Eli Black is the man that has this suicide where he supposedly jumps out of the 44th floor of the Pan Am building, which is now the MetLife building in New York. If you've ever been to like Grand Central Station, it's the right on Park Avenue. That's the MetLife building. So he jumps out of the building and ends up dying, of course. And then the United Fruit Company is then taken over by the Milsteins brothers, and the Milsteins eventually partner with the Lindlers, Carl Lindler from Cincinnati. And there's a lot of local connections too, because Max Fisher, who I've talked about a lot, being he's from Franklin, Michigan, right by me, and of course I grew up with like his grandkids and whatnot. He's a very big name in Detroit as far as being a philanthropist. But they that they convert they basically have taken, rebranded as United Brands. Fisher is very deeply connected with Henry Ford II, who we've talked about being the person that hired the whiz kids at Ford Motor Company and really got the Ford Foundation going. And he's also a mentor of Leslie Wexner, who's down in Columbus, Ohio. And Fisher was he was a football player at Ohio State and very connected with that this mega group, which is the Brofmans being the old Seagrams, in Montreal, and then various other, industrialists. But this Eli Black, he's the father of Leon Black, and Leon, he's a junk bond trader with Michael Milken, and of course Michael Milken is the one that finances the Resorts International when Trump and Merv Griffin buy Resorts International, which was started off as Mary Carter Paints and Paradise Island, and is very connected with the whole Castle Bank and Trust, Meyer Lansky, that whole group. So you have the son of this man that commits suicide in 1973, I believe. But then he, was partnered with Milken. He's the financier of Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein, he resigns at Apollo, which Apollo is another very interesting entity because they end up buying the Academy and the Triple Canopy and Academy, which is the Blackwater's new name. And of course, we have Kofor Black, at Burisma currently, like right now, who's organizing these conferences where they're doing energy security, for Burisma with Ukraine. And it just seems like everybody is tied into this old United Fruit, whether they're on the special forces or enforcement angle, or whether they're in the the legal with the Dulles brothers and Sullivan and Cromwell, or if they're the PR. Edward Bernays was the PR master for the United Fruit. It really seems like this United Fruit is just a really important entity to study.
It's Rockefeller. I mean, it is a Rockefeller vehicle for doing all these different things, crazy things.
Yeah, and then Nelson, of course, was running the Inter America program, which I think about, like, with when they created the CIA and they had the FBI in America, but they had Nelson was running basically the security and intelligence for South America under the Inter America program.
Yeah, I pulled this book up because I really, people, you got to learn, who this Nelson Rockefeller really was. Nelson Rockefeller and Evangelism in the Age of Oil by Gerald Colby and Charlotte Dennett. She is a personal friend of Andy Craig's, who's a great friend of our work. So, but this book, which I have read selected portions of it, as you can see, it's quite heavy, but it's just absolutely devastating when you realize that they're Baptists, but it's a Calvinist form of belief in that they really are going to treat these native people as animals and just do as they will with them. The people would come and complain, that they don't have any food. They don't have any food for their children. And they can say that to a Nelson Rockefeller, and the Nelson Rockefeller can just turn his back and walk away.
Yeah.
Just think, oh, that's too bad. But that's not his problem. Well, it is his problem because he's, dealing with their all of their natural resources and pulling all. I mean, it's just astonishing. But there's so much to Nelson Rockefeller that people don't understand. He seems like a nice guy. They all put on a nice appearance, but
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, it's South America. Oh, they went out. One of their maxims is language is a weapon. So they got these people to study all of the languages. So there'd be a missionary that would specialize in the languages of the tribes of the Amazon, and then they would go out there and use that anthropological approach through the religion. The old trick, the Africa trick. It's all over South and Central America. I mean, I don't think they've missed a single tribe. And
Yeah.
now, look what's happened to all the tribes now. It's just devastating.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to, I feel like I've been so sheltered from all that stuff. So it's hard to imagine it. I've never been in a military or been in a war zone or anything. And so it's very hard for me to understand it because I'm just, that's the conquest has never appealed to me. I mean, that's one of the things that you've talked about with Teddy Roosevelt and his desire to, kill a man and prove himself by, killing somebody, a savage. I don't know. I just have never had that instinct at all. I mean, it's very foreign to me as far as, I don't know. And like I've said before, I don't like tricking people either. I mean, so I feel like there's a lot of it is manipulation. And if you do use sort of a Calvinistic mindset, as far as feel like you're predetermined that you're, chosen to lead or, go to heaven no matter what you do. That's just that, I don't know. It's very hard for me to believe that people really act on that and do it in such a, massive way.
Um, let's spend a little time on another subject that's been on my mind, and I mentioned it the other day with Garland. Is the World Health Organization going to get dominion and control over the health policies and laws of the United States as a result of some treaty between the United Nations and the World Health Organization coming up in late May? I noticed that you've been doing a little work on Dr. Tedros and breaking down where's he really from, and a lot of people just don't have any idea about this man. But more specifically, this, I don't know if you've run into these reports or not, about people will say, oh, like I think Harry the Greek is one that's saying, the Dr. Tedros is going to be in charge of U.S. health policy on May 27th or something like that. Uh, so for an example, you could look at Harry's brassballs.blog to see an example of somebody saying that. But then
Right.
I would have to go and do a whole lot of research to see, is that really what the law is, or is this just, a concern that we should be concerned about?
I think we should be concerned about it. I mean, it's even from the very first charrette when we were, you know, trying to learn this. That was one of the great values of George Webb, was that he had so much background information on a lot of these characters, these health leaders in the United States. He knew a lot about Redfield's background. He knew Birx's background. He knew Fauci's background. Francis Collins. He knew about Tedros and his history in Ethiopia and dealings with Peter Strzok. Um, I think it's very scary because, again, I feel like we've called it out for a couple of years, and again, nothing is ever supported by any other media. What Harry's talking about, I did look into that a little bit, and it is true. They've been proposing, having the World Health Organization, uh, basically have a mandate to control the health organizations of, I think, 160 nations. And again, it's hard. I look at the backgrounds. I mean, there's so much, as far as we've talked a lot about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and their relationship with World Health and with the United Nations and the UN. And then so much of their funding comes from the big Gates foundations and whatnot, and how, and again, it's like, I feel like these things have been discredited. I feel like there's been very credible criticisms of them, which are not, talked about. But again, like even Tedros, like I was looking into his history as far as like when he was the health minister in Ethiopia, and his assistant was a woman. I can't think of her name, but she was from University of Michigan. And I'm always just like blown away by the number of University of Michigan people, because Lord Malik Brown, who was another person that people have really fingered as being a key architect of this, was also a University of Michigan MBA, but she had worked for the Warren Buffett's the Susie Buffett Foundation was her background. So you're right back in there with Warren Buffett, and now that ties directly to the Kissinger, George Shultz, it was Richard Perry and Sam Nunn, who created the Nuclear Threat Initiative. And that's where Warren Buffett has gone in and partnered with the UN's nuclear division to create a low enriched uranium bank in Kazakhstan. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, is where Hunter Biden is, doing business dealings with Kazakhstan. There's a lot of, history with Kazakhstan and with Russia and with the Ukraine, given that they're both former Soviet Soviet Union states. And I do think there's a lot connected there, because again, now we're right back with Margaret Hamburg, who Mark Kulak has done a lot of investigation on Peggy Hamburg, because her father was the head of the Carnegie Institute. Mm-hmm. And she was the chief scientist for the Nuclear Threat Initiative, which their goal is to create a Accords program, which to me sounds exactly like a Vietnam Accords, but it's for health surveillance and health security. So I do think this is what they're up to, and pushing it through as far as having Tedros with his horrible track record as far as the his own country, where he missed I think it wasn't Ebola, but it was one of the,
I think it was cholera,
and he misdiagnosed cholera several times. And it's scary, because again, I feel like there's very credible information that people should be reporting, and it's when they don't give any information about it, and it's only like a George Webb or a Harry the Greek or maybe a couple people posting about this on Twitter or whatnot, where it seems like it's just being completely hidden from the population. I mean, we're all about the the 2000 Mules movie has come out, so people are sort of, if you're a conservative, you're sort of circling back to the election, or if you're interested in Roe versus Wade, that has become a chief issue that people are really focusing on. And it just seems like they're gaslighting these real emotion sparking issues to, and that scares me. That makes me more concerned about something like this WHO, because again, we've talked a lot about who the groups are that do the investigations, that create the medicines, and they're very suspect.
Yeah. My Garland Nixon is good on this, and he has a good following, and he's growing a lot of presence on YouTube, and also Rockfin he's on, but his main presence is on the radio, where he's in both Washington and LA in the Pacifica market. and also I think he's a person, an intellectual, of color, I guess I can say, that is very persuasive, and
Yeah.
I'm so glad that he's here. Um, one of the great heartbreaks of my work is the LaRouche and Schiller people who seem to be completely oblivious to
Yeah.
everything you just said. Everything. It's like it just is right past them. I think that they're the ones that are in Germany are used to trusting the German medical system. But I'm telling you, the German medical system is where a lot of this problem comes from,
Yeah.
especially a particular doctor named Christian Drosten, who had the nerve to claim that he could diagnose COVID based on a PCR test that he somehow modified over the weekend, and it became the standard test. I mean, that's where everybody got scared to death, was
Yeah.
when all these people started showing up positive on a PCR test, but nobody understood that that positive on a PCR test, you got to understand whether that has any actual clinical significance.
Right.
And it really doesn't, according to everything we've learned so far, because they were running the cycles. You know, you're supposed to do it less than 35 cycles, and they were doing it 40 and 45 cycles. And you can find anything if you look hard enough. Apparently, in human anatomy, there's going to be some genetic sequence that's going to look like something that you can. Anyway, I'm out of my league. I don't know medicine well enough to say, except for I do understand that this whole PCR thing has been a disaster.
Well, it's just hard because you don't, again, like if you're not, don't have a medical degree or a career in, health and medicine, you're not qualified to, you know, to challenge the people that are, based on their, you know, credentials and experiences. But what I feel like I can do is I can look at where the people came from, what schools they went to, what associations they have. You talked about Germany. I mean, again, just going back to the Rockefeller Foundation and how they've supported different health institutions and the horrors that have happened based on that, and then just sort of throwing that away. I mean, that's something I'm very interested in, is the history of IG Farben and their medicine, and how they've sort of rebranded things and tucked them away for 20 years as this company, and then it becomes something else, and then if you don't follow it or track it, you don't realize that Sanofi is really huxed, and I don't know, it's hard. So to me, I feel like we've really tried to learn the characters, but they've clearly thought of this very carefully, and they know that by using medical changing existing rules, it seems like they use national emergency is a consistent explanation for why you need to do something, or not follow the will of the people because it's a special situation. And that's what they've created with this whole novel coronavirus. I mean, Mark and you and have talked about this a lot, how you know nothing that we have in existence works, and then we have to go to new techniques to mitigate this. It's very hard for me because, like, I can't trust what you see as far as the reporting of illnesses, or different parts of the country. I mean, I just go with my own personal people that I know and who's gotten sick and things like that. So it makes it hard because, again, they're trying to make it a global situation where it's really hard to measure it, and the people that they've charged to do the monitoring and measuring of it are people that really should be explaining their backgrounds and what they've their careers have been, and not just say I'm an expert and move along, because that, the, the whole metabiota. I talked about the CORDS program, which is a combination of the Nuclear Threat Initiative and the Atlantic Council are partnered, um, to do this investigation. It's just the groups that are really suspect.
Yeah, chords from the Vietnam era is one of the subjects of Doug Valentine's great book, The Phoenix Program, and that idea is basically a dragnet of the people. You just divide the country up into provinces and little groups, and then you get your squad together and you identify everybody, and you put the ones that are questionable on the blacklist. And from there, I mean, the fate of those people is entirely in the hands of your superiors once you write the blacklist. And the idea of something like that coming back in the context of health, I hadn't heard that before. What does cords mean in the modern context?
I'd have to look it up. If you go on the Nuclear Threat Initiative page, you can see the what the acronym stands for. But I'm very big into looking at rebranding of old, things that they want you not to think about, like maybe a program that has a negative. The same way United company goes to United Brands, and now it's Chiquita banana, and everybody just thinks of bananas and not the banana wars. But I think that that's part of what the PR teams do, is they try to rebrand things, or they'll use names that maybe have a bad association and try to, respin them. Um, and that's what I think is going on with that. But they're partnered with the WHO and with, you know, different metabiota groups like that, as far as doing the surveillance and the predict program we've talked about with the WHO. I know George is talking a lot about the Virginia Benassi and her role with the WHO R&D blueprints, which predicts the 5 top disease outbreaks, possible pandemics, with Sina Bavari, who we have talked about, so much. Again, he also ties back to the same Buffett Foundation, Susie Buffett Foundation, that Tedros's assistant was the chairman or president of. So, it seems like it's just the same, you know, synergy group, I guess. That's just, but it seems like there's no resistance to it, even though, I just look at my own family. I feel like, you talked about with Harley yesterday about how I struggle with not being able to feel like I can effectively communicate with my own family about these things, which I think are so important. But it's absolutely true. They go with their doctors, that whatever their doctors tell them, they will follow that. And and again, I don't have that background, so that that's their you know their right to do what they think is best for their health. And it just breaks my heart that they feel like I'm doing something that's reckless and putting them at risk.
We have to keep looking and passing on what we find. I want to pass on the name of Denis Rancourt, or Denis, his first name, and the last name Rancourt. He's a French Canadian speaking. Of course, he speaks beautiful English as well. But he's on a recording now on BitChute, which I have, and he is done statistical analyses of only one subject, and that is excess death records, without regard to the SARS, COVID, or anything like that. Just looking specifically at, for the past 2 years, excess deaths. That means over and above statistical expectations based on past experience. And by looking into there, he's been able to uh, do some really shocking findings. And this this whole idea that this is a viral epidemic, that, we use the word viral as an adjective of how things spread. I'm spreading my music virally, right? Well, you know what that means. It starts from the center and it spreads out.
Mm-hmm.
But do you really see that in the data? You don't. That's what's interesting. And then there's these spikes that all happen, in different places in the world at the same exact time. And if it's spreading from one place to another, why is it all happening boom at the same time? All kinds of interesting things. So that's one person that I'll be looking into more. I'll give a reference to him after the show in the show notes at the bottom. But that's just one. There's always hope, and we keep finding new stuff. And gosh, I remember when we got hit with that back in March of or January of 2020, I guess it was, yeah, down here on Mystery Island, and it was just like, whoa, where did that come from? But uh, yeah, you mentioned Virginia Benassi, and I remember running across her name, and I'm still confused. Is she a real person, or is that just a mailbox? I,
Well,
I
it's one of those things where, again, it it's so important. You think the World Health Organization would present her or have her give a press conference to
yeah,
explain what she's done. I mean, they could put a lot of people at ease. It makes them look very suspicious in the sense that they haven't produced a picture of her. They haven't, there's no recordings of her historically.
that's where litigation can help, is if you can have a case in which it's possible to subpoena this person as a witness.
Mhm.
That is going to create results. And I'd love to see the reaction of getting a subpoena for somebody to testify that they've got completely just. I mean, you can't find a picture of her anywhere.
Yeah, and how would you serve her? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, who knows where she is? She's supposed to be in Geneva. I know George is talking about
Yeah.
going to Geneva to see if there's a parking space for her at the World Health Organization, which,
Yeah.
which
I tell you what, that reminds me
would,
of our great friend Task Force Jenny Moore, because you give the summons to Jenny, she'd serve it.
yeah. Well, but again, that document was so critical. I mean, Rick Bright was on there from BARDA. We've talked about him with, the we with the Milken Institute
Yeah,
eating
is
this.
that the same Milken, by the way?
Yeah, of course, yeah, it's Michael Milken.
So
Yeah,
that's Michael Milken's institute, that was so amazing. I mean, we got.
so it's
I mean,
great.
you remember the four pyramids are in the background. There's, and they're talking. There's these. I mean, they're selling.
Well,
I'm sorry. Shut up, John.
but again, now you're into the old Drexel Burnham Lambert group. So you've got Leon Black, you've got Michael Milken, you've got Ivan Boesky, who Ivan Boesky is a Cranbrook Crane from Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. He went to Cranbrook, and he was a boarding student, and his roommate was the future son-in-law of Max Fisher. So there's a lot of connections there. I mean, that's personal knowledge because this future son-in-law had the shoe store in Birmingham, in the city where I lived, and my dad has known him for 50 years or whatever, just from the community. But you know, they Cranbrook has the Romneys went to school there. Another person I have tried to shine some light on is Alyssa Slotkin. She's a congresswoman from Holly, Michigan, and she's the head of the counterterrorism task force. And she's somebody that, I used to do slumber parties at, her brother was in my grade at Country Day. And so I knew their family, and she's on the head of this stuff. And she's the one that's writing letters to Anthony Blinken right now saying, hey, we've got to name these terrorist groups, these white nationalist terrorist groups, where she put the Azov battalion on the list, but now, now it's like, oh, we don't, no, they're just a pro nationalist group, so it's like there's a lot of local things that really bother me. I mean, the head of the whole Rockefeller Foundation, Raj Shah, is from Groves High School, which is also a Birmingham high school, and Jeffrey Sachs, who's the big UN, the assistant to all the heads of the United Nations. He did I think it was called the Millennium Program. He was very big in the PEPFAR program. He's at Columbia Mailman School of Public Health, which is where Peter Daszak also teaches. It's where Ian Lipkin, who was the guy that was out in China trying to hunt down the origin of coronavirus. There's a lot of local Detroit people that are mixed in there. And again, like I, don't want to, these are people that I grew up around or whatever, but Nathan Wolf is from West Bloomfield High School. He started Metabiota. So I feel like we're trying to, shine light and give some, personal stories, give people a chance to respond, or at least, I don't know, like with the Virginia Benassi being such a key one, but you think that there would be some kind of a movement to be like, show this person, let them talk, let them explain what they're doing. I mean, if we're going into a situation where the World Health Organization is going to truly be the governing body of our health system, and they're going to be able to use a pandemic as far as special emergency to create whatever rules they deem are necessary to protect national security or public health. It's scary. I don't know. I mean, I'm very hopeful that these people will, Mark Kulak talks about this all the time. Like, he doesn't have a platform where he can talk to millions of people and make a big difference, but these characters, they do. And that's my call to them is to explain some of these histories and these inconsistencies. And I don't know. I'm honestly very concerned about what's happening is from that perspective.
I don't think that they have any intention of explaining themselves, and I think that when their deceits get revealed, they've got plenty of media to just. I mean, look at what they did when they leaked the Supreme Court thing on Roe versus Wade. I mean, what that just calls out the troops of the woke brigades. Everybody's wokes, and then anything we're trying to say gets buried, as you pointed out earlier, and it is scary. But gosh, we got to keep on talking and keep on spreading it. I think I mean, I talked to Garland. He usually says it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
A lot of people are come on, John. But me, I'm kind of more with you. I'm like, this doesn't look too good. But there's an awful lot of people that are of a Bill of Rights mindset, especially in the South and in the Midwest and in the Western prairie and plain states. Lots of people, I think, are not going to be happy with the idea of a foreign leader imposing health laws upon us and forcing us to do things. But they have so much control right now. It seems that they do. I don't know. We just thanks for your contributions, and I think you're calling out to people. Somebody's going to hear you. Somebody in Detroit is going to say, "Well, maybe I should step up. Maybe we do all need to stop worrying about our pension plans and start thinking about our basic rights and freedom and also the economy, which is they can pull the rug out from under our economy too, whenever they want to, with all of this debt we have. So we're in a very tenuous situation, and we've got to keep back, get control of Congress back from all these these sold out blackmailed creeps, the ones that went into the brownstones and got filmed, and that, now you get to be a congressman for 40 years.
Well, yeah, I don't, it's, I mean, Adam Schiff and Nancy were, flew out to Ukraine and, just last week. So it's again, they're sticking to their story. And I don't know. I mean,
They don't have a choice.
I don't think they have a choice. And, I'm not, like what Peter Duke talks about, the people you see are not really the ones in control of, of the decision making, and their figureheads. And I think that's true for a big part of it, but I don't, it's just hard. I feel like we're getting to a point though, where it is, it's, the whole UN and WHO. I mean, we've talked about this for, to me, ad nauseum, as far as the smart city program and what they did with the riots and creating the autonomous zones and that sort of scheme. It seems like I felt like we were, calling that out in real time. But again, it just seems like we just move on to the next, hot button thing. I mean, I feel like the Roe versus Wade is, people that really moves people, and it gets people really activated and, interested, and not not focused on other topics.
Yeah, and it's shocking too, because nobody expected that. And
Yeah.
so you got to say, wait a minute, what, Supreme Court? Let's see. Oh, that's right. Yeah. How many Catholics on that thing? Oh, yeah. Makes sense now.
Yeah.
But no, but that wasn't an election issue.
No.
Um, so another chance for the American people to object and say, hey, nobody told us about this. We don't like this. Well, again, it's a distraction, and as you said, but it's because the media is so powerful, just as it was with William Randolph Hearst, who just paid his people to write explosive stories,
Yeah.
even if they weren't true, and sold the war and the colonial empire to the American people, based on lies. And now here we are. You'd think we'd get past the lies, but no, they're ahead of us. They control the media. They've been controlling it since World War II, and we just fell into the idea of, oh, I can look at this channel or that channel or that channel, and oh, here's a public channel. Public, they must be good. I mean, it must be honest. It says public broadcasting, and that we're the public, right? So they
Yeah.
must be honest, right? Yeah, right.
Well,
Okay, tell it's a big bird.
full disclosure, my sister was the assistant to the president of Hearst Magazines for about 9 years. So I got to be a tag along. They would have all these different, like every month when Cosmo would have a magazine come out, they would have a big party to celebrate the launch of the magazine. So I have, I know people have talked about the Tina Brown, who's, at was at Vanity Fair, and I forget the name of her current website that she's doing. But all these characters, I feel like, again, like I've, have some background with I've never met them, but like my sister used to see them all the time. And when the Talk magazine came out, that was the whole uh Weinstein brothers that partnered with Hearst to create a new magazine. And then when Hillary was transitioning from first lady to run for senator in New York, they launched her at the Talk magazine party. That was like the big social event of the year in New York. And so, a lot of these stories that seem to, layer on top of each other, as far as the Weinstein and the Jeff Epstein and all this stuff, like it, I don't know. I mean, I, again, try to write. I mean, that's partly what I try to do with like the Twitter, is to give some of those backgrounds as far as who people are. The other angle that I wanted to say with Hearst is the whole idea that his dad won the San Francisco Examiner or whatever, like in a poker game. His dad was a miner in the Bonanza mine with Guggenheim's and the J.P. Morgan and the whole Alaska Syndicate with the the railroad barons of California, like Leland Stanford. Like he was hooked up with all those guys. So to just place him as this guy that won a newspaper in a poker game is bullshit. He's a player in mining and rail, and so but I love learning about the whole Pulitzer. And then of course the other name that nobody talks about is the E.W. Scripps, who is from Detroit, and he was started the UPI, which was the I think maybe the first before Reuters, the first press wire. And that's another one that gets sort of swept away. People talk about like a Rupert Murdoch or like a Ted Turner, Robert Maxwell or whatever being these media titans. But I don't know. I feel like it's the same things over and over again. I just want Virginia Benassi to give a press conference and talk about writing the blueprint with Sina Bavari and the Rick Bright, and talk about the shutting down Fort Detrick and how that all worked. I mean, those are all things that are record that, again, like, no, not in the conversation.
What happened to the security tapes for when they left the door open? I mean,
what happened when they literally canceled the diplomatic services that were supposed to do the monitoring of it. They literally shut that down. That was something Mark Kulak uncovered right away. I mean, literally, like the week we were there, he was talking about that. And I don't know, the flying the people from China to Omaha to, the sick people, the early people, and then Bavari's connections with Nebraska, University of Nebraska, Omaha, and the Susie Gates Foundation, again, being right there. I mean, these things I feel like we've talked about, and I'm just hoping that people
they're
will.
not going to go away, and people are. I one of my favorite one is Snohomish County Man.
Yeah.
I want to write a ballad. The ballad of Snohomish County Man. I'm looking to make a big hit with this. Somehow we've got to get this out.
And why
it's unbelievable that serious medical professionals around the world, as soon as they got this report that this happened, bought into the entire thing, hook, line, and sinker, without any question. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. And then you have Snohomish County Man is the only person in the world that we respect his privacy, and it's like, oh, we don't want to identify Snohomish Man because he was sick for a couple days and he was not feeling good, and now he's better, but we got to protect his privacy when nobody else has that luxury. And then also the whole flying the sample for Rod Rosenstein's sister, Nancy Massonier, to be the one to sign off on it. I mean, Rosenstein being at the King and Spalding, the same law firm as Sam Nunn, who started the Nuclear Threat Initiative and was also on the Nunn-Lugar Act. I mean, a lot of people crossover. Christopher Wray, the current FBI head, was also an attorney at Spalding and King. I mean, it's, I feel like somebody, I don't know. I'm just hopeful that somebody will get off the script and start, get away from either their, their clearance or their a sworn oath to, a Knights of Malta or whatever it might be, whatever, group that they're clearly, putting ahead of everything else.
Yeah. The preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution doesn't seem to be one of the oaths that these people take. They have other oaths that they take, and boy, if you mess up one of those oaths, man, you're in trouble.
Although I don't know. I mean, it's at the point. I mean, to me, it's just been ridiculous for so long. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
patiently waiting for somebody who's going to be the one that cracks. But again, it's just we go along. We have no, even the idea of the January 6th is still they're still going along with
Oh, yeah.
that.
Yeah, they're still beating that drum, aren't they?
They are even with the whatever 20-year informants are the leaders of the groups doing that. I mean, I live in Michigan, so people talked a little bit about the Whitmer kidnapping situation, but
Hmm.
I mean, come on, that was what was it, 11 informants out of 14 people, and I mean, it's
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. Well, tomorrow morning at 11, I'll have the pleasure of my third interview with Riley Wagaman, who publishes under the name of Edvard Slavskovat in Moscow, Russia. He's an American who works there as a freelance reporter. And so, if you have any questions or things you want to know about what's going on in Moscow or what he thinks about, the prospects for the future, drop them in the comments below, or send me an email, or just check in with the chat tomorrow morning, and I'll have a glance over and see if I can cover everybody's questions, because I really feel it's a great privilege to be able to talk to Riley. He's a young guy that's he's married, he's got a baby, he's going to live in Moscow, and eyes and ears on the street that tell us what's really going on. I think it's a very valuable connection. So join me if you can at 11 tomorrow morning. And well, David, thanks again for sharing all of your great research and thoughts. And I'm with you 100%, man. I'm going to keep on working, and you're going to keep on working, and we are going to win this. I don't know how, I don't know when, but we're going to win it.
yeah. I mean, it's satisfying, at least feeling like you figured out a very confusing puzzle, at least this far, and it's very nice to work indirectly with so many great researchers and people. That's, thank you so much for having me on.
All right. And thank you. All right, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow morning. And David, we'll see you again real soon. Thanks, everybody. Thanks again. And we'll send you off with the Osprey.